Commander Richard Edgecombe, American Legion, and Raul Ortega, the American GI Forum, to please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please remain standing and guard your head? When is the last time you've given thanks to see another sunrise? When is the last time that you've given thanks to see another flower bloom? Thanks to God for seeing another sunset. This evening, as we convene with the Stanislaus County Supervisors, we give thanks. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
God bless you. Go ahead, Tom. Sit down and
Go ahead, John. At this time, I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors to order.
And we'll call the meeting of the Newman City Council to order.
Oh, okay, thank you. At this time, there are some folks, most of the folks here I think are staff, but I would like to introduce the Board of Supervisors. And I'll start with District 1 is Pat Paul. She is in the Oakdale Riverbank District. District 2.
I'm here.
You're here. I even brought them with me.
You're used to another order, aren't you?
Yeah, I know.
Paul, I rode over with you, Paul.
I know. He looks younger sitting up here. Tom Mayfield is the Turlock and Houston area district. District 3, Jeff Grover. He has got the Salida and parts of Modesto area. District 4.
I'm here.
District 4, Ray Simon. He's been here since 1862, I think. That could be. Yeah, I think he's on, 30th year, or around there?
Well, 30.
30 years.
30 years.
And I'm District
Of
5.
punishment.
Yeah, the historian. And I am...
And I'll introduce our Newman City Council. Councilmember Tim Parker, Councilmember Charles Marquez, Councilmember Bob Martina, and Councilmember David Reed, and I'm Mayor John Fantasia.
All right. First order of business for us would be approval of to send a consent letter to the United States Bankruptcy Court and opposing the proposal. So I'd like to have a motion and second on that.
I would move the approval of the letter. And for those of you who don't know why we're sending this, the National Bankruptcy Courts, including the Eastern Division, intend to close the Modesto Bankruptcy Court and move it to Sacramento along with San Joaquin counties. They're pretty sure it's not due to any kind of financial crisis, but it's more or less due to the fact that they're trying to consolidate everything, and we don't think that's a good idea because people will have to travel from here all the way to Sacramento or to Fresno on the other end in order to have this taken care of. So we're opposing it for that reason.
Need a second? I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so ordered. Thank you. Did you have anything in between here?
No.
Okay, first on our agenda will be Patty Hill Thomas. She's the acting CEO for Stanislaus County, and she's going to review the countywide services provided to the residents of Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. It's indeed a pleasure for myself to be here tonight, and thank you for hosting us so graciously this evening. I'd like to start with introducing to you the county staff who are present tonight. We've put together a binder for you. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but we're very willing and happy to be here to answer questions you or the public may have about county services. And we have a particular set of items on the agenda to go into more detail. I'd like to start with the County Executive Office staff. With us tonight is Monica Nino Reed, who's a Deputy Executive Officer. If
Can
you
you
could just
maybe
raise your hand.
either stand or
Okay,
raise your hand
stand.
so these folks can see who you are? Thanks, Monica.
Our Fire Warden, Assistant Director of Emergency Services, Gary Henshaw. We have Ron Freitas, our Director of Planning and Community Development. In the front, we have George Stillman, our Director of Public Works. We have Deputy Executive Officer Richard Jantz, County Counsel Mick Krosnick, Deputy Executive Officer Pat Sweeney. With you this evening, is our great clerk, Christine Ferraro-Tallman, Clerk of the Board of Supervisors. We have Mr. John Emerson, who's the county's Information Officer. Terry Plett, who's the Director of Employment and Training Services for Stanislaus County. Sonia Herringfeld, who's our Interim Director of the Department of Environmental Resources and Parks. We have Claudia Krosnick, a Deputy Executive Officer. We have Vanessa Sopek, our County Librarian. Jim Duvall with our County Planning and Community Development Programs. Keith Boggs from the Chief Executive Office, Economic Development. Michael Rodriguez is here, our Director of Animal Services. Ed Perry is here, the county's Director of Cooperative Extension with the University of California at Davis. Larry Haw is here, our Auditor Controller. Diane Haw is here, who is the Finance Manager for the Department of Public Works. Denise Hunt is here, Director of Behavioral Health and Recovery, and I think I saw Dan Souza walk in, who is the Director of Behavioral Health and Recovery Services for Stanislaus County. Margaret Sapaniak is here. She is the Director of the county's Health Services Agency. And Ken Patterson is here, the Director of the county's Community Services Agency. And who did I leave out? Thank you all for being here. It's our pleasure to be here this evening. We are an amazing business, county government is. And I'm a cheerleader for county government. Sometimes I say a veteran of county government. And in the book, we've done a very small job of describing the kinds of services that we provide as an organization to the community that we serve and the community that you serve. You simply need to drive around the streets of your own community and know where the county government is, whether it's in Newman or Patterson or Modesto, whether it's library services or child protective services or animal services or all the kinds of things that county governments do together. And we indeed are proud to have the partnerships we have with you already. The intention of the information that we provided tonight, and if the public is interested, we'll make sure that we have a copy at the back of the room, is to really share the kinds of services that Stanislaus County government provides. So each of your council members has before you a summary of the kinds of things that the county does here in Newman and how it affects the citizens of Newman as well as the citizens of Stanislaus County. So with that, I and my colleagues would be happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
I think there may be just one introduction necessary. A distinguished gentleman in the back with the green uniform. As if he's from Sheriff Les Wiseman's office.
Assistant Sheriff Puttiff, I think, must have come in while I was speaking, so I'm sorry I missed you, and it's very nice to have you here. Thank you, Karen.
And I guess my question would be, were you guys requested to come as staff or volunteered? Welcome, is what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
weren't sure how many people would turn out, and so we decided to bring our own.
I think we did.
We are growing in this city. Thank you.
Okay, I will. I'm not a good loud talker. Would you like me to move on to the next part of the agenda, Mayor?
Could I introduce our staff, Patty,
Absolutely.
in between?
Please. I'm going to sit down.
We have our Chief of Police tonight, Mike Brady. Public Works Director, Ernie Garza. We have our Community Development Director, Michael Holland. We have the guy that's trying to sneak in the back there, our new City Manager, John French. Our Financial Director, Catherine Weimer. And did I forget anybody? Judy Silber, our City Clerk. I think. Got him already. And, oh, Bob Naveau, our cameraman, I know he wants an introduction. So.
Good-looking jewelry guy.
We'll welcome the county supervisor and staff to this meeting. Oh, George Stillman, I'm sorry. George, how's it going? You're like, I've been seeing you every day. You're like part of our staff, I feel like.
Don't get any ideas, okay?
It appears we've lost the mic, so please speak up. All the mics are dead, so please speak up.
Oh.
They're recording over here.
Can't hear us out there?
We'll speak directly into it.
Okay, Patty, if you want to continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I also see now as I look around, Supervisor-elect Jim Gimartini is in the audience. And did I miss any other staff? Oh, now it's back.
Okay.
Oh, boy, I wish I could sing. All
Let's
right.
not push it.
He knows me
We are
too
in
well.
here.
We're going to, Chairman Caruso asked us to do a brief overview of the county budget update, and I was just speaking with Mr. French for a moment, and much of our story is a story that a city government knows as well. So we're going to show a couple of pictures on the screen, if that meets with the pleasure of the council and the board, and try to give you and the public an overview of some of the budget issues and challenges that your county government faces. As you know, the county government serves the entire community of Stanislaus County. And who's operating? Okay, go ahead. Let's go ahead. The county's vision is to be a county that is respected for its service in the community and is known as the best in America. And our mission, adopted by our Board of Supervisors, is for Stanislaus County serving the public interest by promoting public health, safety, welfare, and the local economy in an efficient and cost-effective manner. The next slide shows you the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors' priorities to ensure a safe and healthy community, to facilitate economic development, deliver excellent community services, promote efficient government operations, achieve multi-jurisdictional cooperation, and model community leadership. And these are trying times for cities and counties because we are all subject to what happens in Sacramento, and those priorities sometimes established at the local level are really a challenge as we face the state's budget crisis together. What do? Stanislaus County is one big public business, but we are in fact 28 distinctly different public businesses, from the Ag Commissioner and Animal Services to sheriffs and the treasurer. Much of what we do covers the entire county, and every citizen in one way or another is served or touched by county services. Many of the services that the county provide are the last resort services, and we act as an agent on behalf of the state of California or the federal government, particularly in public assistance and child support services. And we provide many direct community services, from libraries in partnership with you and the public, and law enforcement, and many others. So this is just an overview of the different kinds of businesses that your county government is in. The county budget is made up primarily of the big yellow piece, the 53%. It is made up primarily of revenues from other governmental agencies, primarily the state and federal government. So when you hear us talk about the general fund and about the county's total fund, which is nearly approaching $1 billion a year, the bulk of that is in federal aid and state services that the county provides on behalf. This first chart shows you where the money comes in that funds your county government. The next largest category is charges for services, and that may be entry fees for parks or other departmental services that the citizens pay for to receive the service. Taxes, amazingly, and this is not a commonly known fact, make up only 9% of the revenue of a county government budget. The next slide shows you where the money goes. And overall, in the total county budget this year at $770 million, 53% of the money goes to the health and human services portions and functions of county government. You can see that 17% go to criminal justice and public protection, 22% to fiscal and general services, and 8% to public resources such as public works, environmental resources, and those kinds of services. So most of the money comes from an outside state or federal source, not most of the money coming from locally derived sources. And then you can see from this chart that the primarily locally provided services, which are in the purple and the blue and some in the tan color, are where the local dollars go. The next chart shows the county's fund types, because the county is an agent in many cases for the state or federal government, as I said earlier. 55% of our funds are called special revenue funds as you look through your county budget. And I brought one tonight if anyone in the public or you would like to go through that. 25% is our general fund. And I imagine with your city manager and your finance staff and your council, you do a great deal of talking about the impact on the city's general fund, because that indeed is the last local revenue source for cities and counties to make decisions about the levels of service they may want to have, particularly public protection. In this case, you can see that the special revenue funds, again, which are primarily health and human service programs, make up 55% of the fund type in our county budget. So if you get a sense of more than half is for primarily health and welfare programs, and substantially less is derived locally, then what the next chart shows you is where discretionary resources go. And to be clear, those are what's left of property tax dollars, local share of sales tax dollars, local share of vehicle license fees. And those local funds, I'm sure for cities, as we watch this unfolding challenge with Sacramento, just like with counties, are those that continue to be threatened in a way by the state budget crisis. But in our county government, those local funds go 57% to criminal justice. So the point that we'd like to communicate tonight is that those federal and state funds are primarily focused on state and federal programs in the health and human service area, particularly human services, and the local funds traditionally used for public protection, libraries, and other local services like parks are those that are derived locally but continue to be challenged by the state's budget crisis. These are indeed times of challenges and opportunities. Some days we use the word constraints. Some days we use other words to describe the fiscal dilemma that we face. But for your county government, for the third year in a row, the cost of doing business continues to outpace available resources. And many of you, I'm sure, are private business people, and members of your public and your community are, and we all have the challenges of workers' comp, for which there is now some reform in place, rising health insurance costs, labor costs, the cost of fuel to operate your police department, I'm sure, and our sheriff's office to keep them on the street. All of those business side costs continue to go up while our revenue side challenges continue to grow and worsen. Right now, regrettably, the state of California owes Stanislaus County over $21 million in services that the county government has provided in accordance with state law. These are mandated programs that have been provided, but for which now we're entering the third year, actually the beginning of the fourth year, of no reimbursement for those mandated costs. And that's a challenge for your county government and for the community, because the law says a certain level of service must be provided and that the state shall reimburse the county. However, the state has been unable and has not chosen to make a priority that funding of local county governments. And at this very moment, we're talking about $21 million. Now, if you look back to what I showed you, the size of the county general fund is, you know, that's a significant cash issue and service issue as well. We have a health services agency that serves this entire community, but continued lack of adequate reimbursement for Medi-Cal and other programs continues to jeopardize our public health system. This is not just a Stanislaus County issue. It's a statewide issue, and in some cases it's a federal, nationwide issue. We have a tremendous number of examples that I won't go through tonight where there are other losses of state revenue tied to critical programs. The next slide shows you and just suggests that workloads don't go down, caseloads don't go down, and demands and needs for services don't go down, but the funds continue to go down. And that's, I'm sure, a dilemma that you face as well as a city. And that final point under slide number 3 is that our revenue stability as a local government, much like cities, I believe, continues to be threatened, and it changes. It's gone from property tax to sales tax to vehicle license fees, and now in the new state budget just adopted, we're back to property taxes. So I want to show you a picture. That's okay, it's there. Stanislaus County, and it's a long story and I won't explain it, but 2 of our county supervisors were in Sacramento today, and I applaud their efforts trying to persuade the legislature to realize that after the passage of Proposition 13 and the resulting legislation over the remaining years since then in 1978, that there was in fact a moment in time frozen back then where the share of the property tax dollars that go to counties, even though counties all are mandated to provide the same kinds of services, was frozen. And in our county, there was a very low property tax rate. There were very well-placed and well-planned reserves. And as a result, our share of the property tax dollar has been frozen at 11 cents. And you can see our 2 closest neighboring counties, both San Joaquin and Merced, enjoy a much greater share of the property tax dollar. The next slide shows you what has happened with vehicle license fees. We all know that there's been a great deal of drama in the state about vehicle license fees, and they've actually been reduced by our new governor. And that action was taken in December when he took office, in November and December. Vehicle license fees became the county's greatest revenue source over time, amazingly over my career. And as you can see how this chart drops off, as a result of the state budget that has just been adopted, they will no longer be a significant at all source of funding for county government programs. Likewise, the next chart shows you the relationship of property tax dollars. Even though we're frozen at 11 cents and we think our share should be greater, and by the way, we don't think that share should come from cities. The cities in Stanislaus County also have a low percentage of property tax dollars. It's really the state's obligation to cities and counties is what we're talking about, and then the state using the revenue to supplant the schools, and that's really the fundamental question there. This chart shows you, I think the most important part is the line between the 2 last diamonds, that now, as of the new state budget, property tax dollars have become critical to the funding of county government services. So where does your property tax dollar go in Stanislaus County? This chart shows you that for the most part, the property tax dollar, every dollar paid, goes to meet the state's obligation, constitutional obligation to fund our schools. And so 57% of every dollar in property tax paid, it goes to the state and they send it to the schools. 3.4% goes to our independent special districts, and we know the fire protection districts and many others are critical to our local government delivery service. You can see that the county general fund gets that 11%, or that's that 11 cents out of the dollar. And finally, the ERAF, a term we all in government know, but for the public, the Educational Relief Augmentation Fund, which was another way of funding the schools, state's obligation for the schools, gets 15%. So I know that I often talk to citizens who say, but I pay my property tax dollar to have this level of service, and indeed they do pay them, but the state legislature over time has significantly changed the relationship between property tax dollars and our cities and counties. A couple of final points, and I don't really think I'm going to run through the rest of the slides, Christine, so we can stay there. I'm sure that we're not telling you anything that you aren't already feeling in your own city and your own community. These are indeed the most challenging fiscal times we have seen. We want to stay on course, try to steer our ability to provide, and for the Board of Supervisors to provide local services and to increase our share of local dollars through the state's new budget, challenges. This November will be a critical time for cities and counties. As you know, I know you know, and the public should know, this year and next year, cities and counties and special districts are giving up $1.3 billion for the next 2 years towards the state fiscal crisis. And the voters are to consider in November whether they will protect local revenues after that in the future and provide some form of relief to local government. So there is much to still remain to be decided, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. This is a good segue for me, the last statement that you made. I happen to represent our city and my colleagues in Monterey at the time that the budget was passed. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up at the League of California Cities conference there. There were roughly 500 of us from the local level. And of course, what you just mentioned, we united CSAC, League of California Cities Special District, to get through this budget crisis, to make sacrifices for 2 more years. What do you see from given that perspective, particularly our shortfall in the property tax revenue, how we could benefit from no longer having to deal with the triple switch and the shifting of funds to ERAF, et cetera? What is your perspective on that for our particular county?
Well, for our particular county, each of the next 2 years for county government alone, the share of the pain, as you just described very well, Council Member, is $4.5 million a year lost this year and $4.5 million loss next year. And our hope is, and I know our board members may want to comment on this as well, that the constitutional amendment before the voters will protect local revenues, but there is some debate about that because it does allow for the legislature to return back to cities and counties 2 more times if the state budget crisis is not resolved. So my take on that is that we all need to work behind your efforts and the efforts of the board to find some real structural reform in government financing in California so that local government services don't continue to be threatened in the future. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was about as politically polite as I could be, I think.
We'll be feeling the pain for a couple of more years.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Good. Any other questions?
Can I have a question, please?
Sure. Go ahead,
Roll
Rob.
Big American Uniform.
Good morning.
Can you please tell me for what areas do you put money for the veterans? What's the percentage of these?
You know, I'm going to hope Monica will pull out a budget. There's back in the room. The county has a veteran service office, as you know, Mr. Ortega, and I recall off the top of my head, but we'll pull that out and provide that to you. But that investment of some local money and federal money brings in a tremendous amount of service to the veterans community-wide. And while that doesn't show in the county budget, we do try to describe that. So we'll get that information to you.
That was my question.
Yes.
If we include the amount. Thank you.
Yes. Our county budget for the Office of Veteran Services in the new year is $236,000, and that investment, along with others, brings in virtually millions of dollars of local services for veterans.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Are we done? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Patty, do you have the amount that it brings in? That's our share, the $236,000 is our share, right?
That's our share of...
What I think what he's asking is how much does it bring in, if we put our share in, how much does it bring in?
You know, I don't think it says in the budget document, Supervisor Mayfield, but I know that it brings in millions of dollars. I have seen estimates that could exceed $3 million, but I'm going to get back to you, and we'll get back to Mr. Ortega as well, because I don't see our Director of Veterans and Aging Services here tonight. But it indeed brings in and leverages for grants and other programs and other funding sources. It's a tremendous return on the local investment.
Like all things, as a county, they leverage the money. It could be the veterans, it could be anything else, but we may put in a certain percent, maybe 10%, 5%, 12%, but that leverages a lot more money from the federal and state government.
Right, and just to be clear, and I think we're probably in agreement on this, that money, those millions don't come through the county budget necessarily. They're in programs and other veteran services that we would lose if we didn't continue to make the local investment. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Patty. Next on the agenda is Chief Gary Henshaw. He's going to go over the emergency operations plans for the city of Newman. Gary?
Mr. Mayor, members of the Newman City Council, Chairman Caruso, members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Gary Henshaw. I am the Stanislaus County Fire Warden, Office of Emergency Services. Good news, bad news. Good news is I love talking about emergency management. Bad news, I've got just a few minutes, so I'm going to make this brief. Three big issues that I'd like to talk to you about tonight. The first one is, well, let me give you an idea of the services that I provide through my office. Through the fire warden's position, I work with all of the fire districts. There are 17 different districts and departments that make up the delivery system of Stanislaus County. My job is coordination and communications amongst those districts. Secondarily, I serve as the Fire and Life Safety Mutual Aid Coordinator for the state at our level. Every time there's mutual aid outside of our county, that comes through my office. I also serve as the Operational Area Coordinator for the Office of Emergency Services through Stanislaus County, and by that we have two EOCs, the Emergency Operations Center in Modesto and our alternate site in Ceres. And secondarily, if Chief Brady had an emergency over here and he called for assistance and you opened your facility, then I'm required to open mine, and we would do that automatically. Your emergency operation plan. If you remember back in 1991, we had the tunnel fire in Oakland Hills, and we lost over 3,000 homes. Senator Petrus lost his home in that fire, and at that time he passed a piece of legislation called SB 1741. That basically said we were all going to play by one set of rules under standard emergency management. That plan is that we're all going to have emergency operations plans that are consistent. The city and the county, the city of Newman and Stanislaus County, as well as all of the cities, have come together and developed all of our plans so they dovetail. We all say the same things, we all talk the same talk, we all communicate the same way, and we outline how we deal with emergencies together. We do that under a thing called ICS, command system. This plan was developed in conjunction with the city of Newman, and ironically, tomorrow morning, I think many of you as members of the city council, under the direction of Chief Brady, will go through an orientation to your emergency operations plan, and then you will also go through SIMS overview, which is the standard emergency management system, and ICS, and then we'll come back in a few weeks and jointly we'll present a tabletop exercise in which you will then put these things to use, feel more comfortable about how we go through emergencies. The reason I say that is that we're an all-risk environment. That is, anything that rises above the level of day-to-day operations that requires multiple agencies to work well together requires a plan. And when we look at what's going on under Homeland Security, and these were all built under natural or man-made disasters, if we look at Homeland Security, we've seen two national exercises. Both have said the same thing. If you can exercise your plans locally, if you can communicate well with your partners, and coordinate your activities, and do the basics well, you'll be prepared for a major event. So us preparing for a major event, we need to prepare for the minor event and do well. And once we finalize that, then we move on to major events. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with a walk, and then we're going to learn how to run in these things. Secondarily, I want to tell you that through my office, we have what we call the Operational Area Council, and that's made up of all 9 cities, special districts, the utilities, private business interests, and through that, actually this Thursday afternoon, and Chief Brady will probably be there, we'll have an agenda that looks like this: the West Nile virus update by Dr. Walker as that moves through our county and much of the state. We'll talk about local hazard mitigation plan and the requirement for that, and we've got that approved by our board last week for submission, and I'm sure you'll move forward on that as well. Then we'll talk about some other things. Then in the fall, we'll bring the National Weather Service folks down to talk to all the emergency managers that represent the cities in the county and see what the winter looks like. And we all know how prognosticators and weather forecast people are, but they'll give us an idea what the winter's going to look like. The last issue I wanted to talk to you about, it's very important. Our board just approved this last week. It's called Local Hazard Mitigation Planning. It's a requirement that we have no federal funding for, but we have to provide a plan. The plan requires us to look at 5 major events that are all naturally occurring: floods, fires, landslides, dam failures, and inundations. As we look at those events, our plans are fairly well outlined in our emergency operations plan, but secondarily, we have to submit to FEMA by November 1st to maintain our eligibility for pre- and post-disaster monies. So if we have an event, we need to make sure that our plans are on file. We started this last year with 66 districts, 9 cities in the county with this endeavor, and Chief Brady went through that with us. And I'll pass this out real quickly. Again, this is something that our board approved last week, and we're moving through this process. But we just didn't want to stop with putting together a plan and meeting the objective. We went beyond that. We teamed up with our IS department at the county, all 9 cities, and we took a look at a way that we could really design a tool that would help us during an emergency. That is, that we'd be able to look at all the infrastructure, all the buildings, anything that might be an evacuation center, how many does it hold, what are the traffic routes, how do we contact those, and we wanted them at our fingertips. We wanted this to be a useful tool, and Chief Brady supplied a lot of that information for the city of Newman to the county, and our IS department has put that online, and I've asked John Emerson to give you just a Nichols tour of this because we're pretty proud of this next piece. So John, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Chief Henshaw. One of the benefits, Chief Information Officer doesn't mean public relations. It means computer systems, but also I get the pleasure in helping departments deliver new services and have new capability through the use of technology. And helping Chief Henshaw has been one of those pleasures. We've got a map over there, and this is the hazardous materials map Gary was just talking about. I've also got maps being passed around up there because I know it's hard to see. But basically, everybody can hear okay? Basically, the first map is earthquake hazards. And what we do is we layer all the stuff that comes from the federal government, state government, and down to the parcel level. So we've got a pretty good idea. It's quite good accuracy. And now if we can turn this round, okay, we should put this in the okay. This is the flooding map. So if there's an issue with dams or an issue with flooding, basically shows us again exactly where the impact's likely to be. And this is very important. You've got a lot of different agencies trying to work together in these situations, that they all have access to the same amount of data. Okay, the second part of this is we're working on integrated messaging systems, so in an emergency everybody can communicate. And the third component is we're working on a emergency center software program that kind of coordinates all responses and keeps us up to date with all risks. So those 3 things together hopefully will help Gary fulfill his awesome responsibilities in having to deal with emergency responses in the county.
I have to jump in here just a little bit when you pull out the map that shows the floods, because we've had some experience there, and a little bit more than I think that we, all in this county would like to have. My question, because we're speaking of that, did our county get involved at all helping out San Joaquin County with a mutual aid with the levee breaks? And just before you respond to that, I'll have most in the audience to know, if you didn't know, there was a presentation out of Barbara Matthews' office, assembly member out of the 17th District, by her Chief of Staff, Kathleen Kaljani. Our drinking water, unbeknownst to probably most people, was probably at a close stench of being in danger, which would have affected about 22 million people in this state. In other words, the levee breaks didn't just flood out farmland and damage some crops and the poor farmers whose land was flooded, but the fact that the delta meshing with salt water was a plausible thing that could have happened. So I wanted to know, did we have any involvement there?
We were contacted after the flood began, after the levee break, by mid-afternoon. The only request of Stanislaus County was for law enforcement boats. We passed that off to the Sheriff's Department. They have responsibility for mutual aid coordination of the law enforcement piece for Region 4. Assistant Sheriff Putoff and his group sought out and provided those sorts of assets that were requested. Nothing else was requested out of Stanislaus County. They really wanted the law enforcement vessels from in the Delta that were equipped to manage that. We monitor that a couple of different ways. Day to day, I work very closely with the State Office of Emergency Services. I'm provided RIMS Update, which is a reporting information system that we will then share through our IS division. Secondarily, we receive digital information throughout the day on updates on that, but there were no requests specifically of assets in Stanislaus County. Our Chief Executive Officer, Patty Hill Thomas, our interim, she offered assistance to the county of San Joaquin County immediately. They appreciated that offer, but there was nothing that we could really provide from them out of our county, but we were in close communications with them.
Thank you. I just think it's important to mention that and for the public to know the wherewithal that why he comes up and talks about SIMS and the ICS system, how important it is for us to integrate, particularly in our state, and our national security effort is taking on that. I think that we are the leaders in that with SIMS, and they're taking it on and using ours. I wouldn't say leaders, but California has kind of come out forward thinking with this, and it's being adopted in some sense nationally.
We were pretty successful in California with a thing called SIMS, and the national level now is NIMS. And they've given a new
Sounds
title,
familiar,
and
right?
we're going to follow their ground rules because they have a fairly large pocketbook, and
With the
sometimes
money,
we need that.
yeah.
So, any other questions that I can answer?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I just wanted to add, if I may, that all this technology is based on the internet, so your local officials can access a lot of it and use a lot of it without too much trouble. The thing we have to be careful about there is that while it's open access, there's a security element we have to be careful of. I was aware that 2 weeks ago, during this situation in New York with the terrorists hitting financial institutions, the Citibank not only had a three-dimensional picture of their building on the web, but also a list of the vulnerabilities. So clearly, we don't want to expose ourselves there. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, John. Did they cover it, Mark? You were going like that. I mean, you're okay. Okay. Next, we have the Community Development Block Grant Program. Ron Freitas. Ron is our planning director for the county.
Thank you, members of the council, members of the Board of Supervisors. Stanislaus County has been in the block grant program for a number of years, and in the year 2002 we were granted status of being an entitlement agency. Prior to that we were non-entitlement, which meant in order to receive community development block grant funds we had to apply every year. Well, in 2002 we were offered that opportunity to become entitlement status, and also along with that we were to invite the 7 cities in the county that were not entitlement status. Those, for lack of in brevity, Modesto and Turlock are entitlement status, the remainders are non-entitlement. At that time we were asked to invite all those other cities to join. The city of Oakdale and the city of Patterson joined us for the year 2002, 2003, 2004. In 2005, which will be coming up, we were asked again if we wanted to renew, and we did. We said we sure do. Oakdale and Patterson both want to join in the program, but we also sent around invitations to all the other cities who hadn't joined us the first time. And at that time, City of Newman said that they wanted to join, which we're very happy that Newman has now joined with us. I believe the City of Waterford and the City of Ceres has now joined us in the block grant program. And what that means to the city is that you will receive in block grant funds an amount of money on an annual basis. And those types of projects that you can do, we've provided a little bit of in your packet, I hope, a list of the kinds of projects that can happen. We have used the money to fund sewer infrastructure in the Robertson Road neighborhood. We're funding the construction design for a storm drainage infrastructure in the community of Keys. As the program goes on, we'll also fund the construction of storm drainage. We continue to use the funding for first-time homebuyer program. Oakdale used it to institute a senior adult outreach program, funding a housing rehabilitation program, purchased equipment for joint gymnasium use in the city of Oakdale. Patterson constructed ADA sidewalk ramps, pedestrian safety zones at roundabouts, constructed street infrastructure improvements, and constructed AGA compliant restroom facilities at a park. So there's a variety of types of projects that can be utilized through the block grant program that all benefit the targeted income groups. So with that, we're glad to have you on board. You'll be working with Jim Duvall and myself, Anna Rocha, and Aaron Farnan in our department.
I think we'll be working with Mike Holland and your city manager in order to facilitate the kinds of projects that you will have the ability to complete and work for your city. So if there are any questions, happy to answer.
Seeing none? Thank you, Ron.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item E would be George Stillman, talking about flood mitigation. George, you have to talk right into that thing because you're pretty soft-spoken.
Okay, I'll get right up close. Oh, gosh, that should do it. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, members of the board and the council, George Stillman, County Public Works Director. And it's a pleasure to talk to you again about our Orostimba Creek project. I would just like to give a very quick summary as to where we are. The engineering report for all of the options for flood control is now essentially complete. We have dollar amounts for all of them. The only numbers missing from those are environmental remediation options, and we need to do a little bit more on some right-of-way costs to reflect what's actually going to be acquired. That is really the first major step in obtaining funding, because once we have these costs, we then can calculate the benefit-cost ratio of each one of the particular options. And from a practical perspective, the Corps of Engineers will almost always pick the, in quote, cheapest option that they have. So that's why we need to move forward on a number of these. The costs for the various options vary from about 25, 26 million up to 40, 50, or 60 million. The most expensive ones entail a whole lot of environmental remediation that we quite frankly don't feel that we should be responsible for. The least expensive alternative so far, the dry dams upstream of the California Aqueduct on Orostimba Creek. I know that's been probably no surprise to most people. That is, by all appearances, the very best site that we can get. The analysis will continue. We need to move forward. There are two areas now of concern that we have. It seems like we've solved one, we get another. The first is that the Corps of Engineers only has $200,000 in their budget next year for this project. $200,000 is a lot of money, but it doesn't go very far with the Corps. Working with Congressman Cardozo's office, we think we've identified some additional funding for that, and hopefully that'll be coming through. If it does not come through, and if we're still stuck with the $200,000, we will be back to you with a plan to try to get the project going and finished, because we don't think we can wait a year for new congressional appropriations. The second thing we're watching is that due to the budget concerns the state has that we've been discussing, the various state departments have been asked to identify pieces of land they no longer need and to sell those. Unfortunately, a large chunk of land that we needed is state land, Department of Water Resources land, the Sycamore area upstream of the California Aqueduct. We do not know yet if the state is going to declare that surplus and try to do something with selling it. We're getting very involved with the state's processes to make certain that they understand that we need that property. That we're not in a position quite yet to purchase it or to recommend it be purchased because we have not chosen that alternative yet. So we need to find a way to hold on to that land and try to convince the state they do not want to put that up on the auction block. But we'll definitely keep you appraised as to what's happening with that. Other than that, the project's moving forward slowly, unfortunately. That's the federal system, unfortunately. We'll push it as fast as we can to get the flood control that the community needs. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
George, I wanted to thank you very much for all your help and the county's help on this. Without you spearheading this, we wouldn't be where we are today, and that's why I made the comment. I feel like you're on our staff because you've been helping us out so much. And you were over here yesterday briefing us, and
I thank you for
really
that.
appreciate that and appreciate the county's help.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Okay, next will be Richard Jantz, the advance of the Crow's Landing Air Facility, hopefully someday.
Good evening, Chair, board members, Mayor, council members. Pleasure to be here to talk about a wonderful asset that will soon be transferred to Stanislaus County and the community. I have a hard copy for each of you to look at, if you will, and I will brief you on the transfer process and also the planning process for the future use of the Crow's Landing Air Facility. Many of you have been following this process for a long time, so I'm not going to go into the scope, if you will, of the project or the description of the project per se. But I do want to talk briefly about the three-track process that staff in the steering committee have been pursuing for the last few years. Excuse me. I want to start with the aviation designation of the base and the permit process for a general aviation airport. Then I'll talk a little bit about the master planning process for the larger area that encompasses all the acreage. And then I will close by talking a little bit about the title transfer of the property, the conveyance from the federal government to Stanislaus County. We are in the process of identifying, if you will, that portion of the base that is best suited for aviation services. The Board of Supervisors, along with the Alliance, has authorized up to $100,000 to do a aviation market demand study. In essence, what this is going to help us determine is what it's going to take to make this base viable in terms of providing aviation services. That includes the improvements of the runway, that includes the necessary security, and that includes the necessary operational costs on a yearly basis, and to meet the conditions of obtaining a permit, if you will, from the State Department of Transportation. It is our thinking that with a general aviation airport that provides air service, we will be able to attract businesses to this area, not only in terms of air cargo, but also in terms of corporate jets and things of that nature. So it's our intent, and we've had discussions with FAA and Caltrans, is to recommend to the board that a certain portion of this base, perhaps 500 acres out of 1,500 acres, be designated as a general aviation airport. And it is our goal and our purpose, if you will, to make sure that we have in place the infrastructure and the market, if you will, that will help this base be self-supporting and not necessarily require a public subsidy. With that said, as some of you know, and some of you are here that participated in the steering committee meetings, Mr. Stevens and others, we have met probably a number of 10 times, Supervisor Crusoe chairing these committees, to talk about the long-range plan of their air base. In so doing, we've invited people down from the Port of Oakland, from Mather, and as far as away as Florida, if you will, to talk about how you can develop something like this into what we call a ground and air distribution center. We think the proximity to I-5 lends itself to developing an intermodal transportation center that includes, of course, truck traffic, airline service, and perhaps rail. So those meetings have taken place. This group has identified, if you will, a vision for the future of this air base. One thing that has slowed this process is the lack of clear title. We do not want to recommend to the board significant investments in this asset until we do have clear title. Now let me talk about the title process for a moment. Something that has taken much longer than we've anticipated, but I do say again, we are getting closer, and we are very close. In doing the title transfer, we've had to deal with the Navy, who has responsibility for the cleanup, with NASA, who currently holds title to the property, with the Federal General Aviation Administration, with the State Regional Water Board, and also with the State Department of Toxic Substance and the State Waste Management. We have conference calls every other month. In fact, we're having one tomorrow to make sure that everything is moving along in a very deliberate way, if you will. On the last page of the document, and I'm sorry I don't have copies for everybody in the audience, we have a, for lack of a better term, a map or an outline of the base. And you can see the number of parcels that have been carved out that need additional environmental remediation. The Navy will continue to do their thing and make sure that the water and soil are cleaned up. And those parcels will not transfer to the county in the near future. They will transfer at a time when the system for cleanup has been designed and when the system is in place for cleanup. The remaining acreage, the 1,350 acres, is due to transfer within a couple months. What we've been told and what we understand and what we're going to hear again tomorrow is that the environmental baseline survey is now complete. One thing that held or slowed that process is recently they found 30 acres along Bell Road that had some contaminants on it, and we had to go back in and do the record of survey again. But as I know tonight, we've completed all of the environmental requirements, and we're very close to completing the legal requirements in terms of escrow and things of that nature. So we're in the process of preparing for the board, which we hope to bring to them probably the end of September, an agenda item authorizing or asking for authorization to accept title. There are certain covenants, if you will, certain restrictions that we have to live with for a while. As an example, within the largest contaminated area, we will recommend and agree, if the board concurs, that we will not pump water within 2,000 feet. That does not hinder the development of the base because there's not a lot, but there's a number of deep water wells that provide sufficient water, irrigation water for the base. I'll be glad to answer questions.
Frank Galbraith, American Jazz Forum. You say you have a master plan, correct?
We're working on a master plan.
Does your master plan take into account the use by veterans as part of that property?
No, it does not.
Why not?
It does not.
Why not?
At this point, we do not see that any part of the property meets the needs of the veterans. I have met with the 22 veteran organizations within Stanislaus County. I have shared with them the condition of the base, the fact that most of the facilities that are on the base will not transfer with the property at this time. The only infrastructure transferring with the property at this time are the 2 runways. It's my understanding from the veterans organizations that they're looking for facilities where they can co-locate their services. And at the last meeting when this issue was discussed in front of the board directed staff to work with the veteran organizations and to see if we could identify facilities in a developed area that would meet the needs of the veterans. I have extended that offer to the veteran organizations, and they were going to go through the process of being more specific in terms of the type of facilities that they would need in order to relocate or co-locate, I should say, their various services. To summarize, we do not believe that there's property at the Crow's Landing Air Base especially during this first round of transfer, that would in any way meet the needs of the veterans as expressed to me.
Which 22 organizations did you meet with?
I certainly couldn't name all of them, but I did go to the meeting, and Mr. Ortega was there, and we had a discussion, and it was my understanding that all of them had an interest in working together, and what was expressed to me again is that their primary need was to have a facility where services could be co-located.
Now, Mr. Jans, I was at least one of the meetings, and I know that you meet primarily with the American Jazz Forum on this particular issue, but I know that the American Legion and the Veterans Forum North and the Vietnam Veterans of America also share our interest in property offers and naval air stations. The issue that I have is if no property, if you've already determined that no property there is suitable for us, are you going to be able to give us the reasons why that's true? And I'm not saying here now, but give us the reasons why that's true. And secondly, are you ready to meet with the veterans organizations, and I'm talking about the four largest here in the counties, to begin talks regarding some other county property? Are you ready to do that?
Yes is the answer to both of those questions. Yes. We'll be glad to give you reasons why it's not suitable. And as I stated in the meeting with all 22 veteran organizations, I would be glad to meet with them anytime to discuss your needs.
When was the meeting and where and what time, and was anybody notified about this meeting? Because I'm one of the particular people interested in this. I was past commander of the state, not state, but in the 12th district and post 74 in Modesto. And I have never heard of this, and I haven't spoke to you at all about this.
Okay.
And I'm working on another project for the whole county.
The County Veterans Service Department, if you will, or organization, conducts or holds these group meetings. I believe it's every other month, if not on a monthly basis.
It's on a monthly basis.
Okay. And I was invited to that meeting, and I discussed this. The point of it is, I will be glad to attend the next meeting and share with you all the details of this air facility, share with you the transfer process, and describe for you the characteristics of the facility, and I'm glad to take you on a tour of the facility. So I'm at your disposal if you would like to attend the next meeting and listen to the discussion.
I want to give you a little bit of back history. I think the council members here have not heard from us. The board supervisors have. They have listened to us for the past 5 years. I think that's when I originally took on this phase. One of the things that happened through the process is what happened, and you said it a minute ago. When you're going to have a meeting tomorrow, none of us have been receiving that information. And going back to years past, has been meetings that you have had, that we have never gotten the information. Also, we ask you for minutes of meetings that you had at these other places, and there's no meetings to be had. You brought out some info to us when we met over at City Hall. We looked at stacks of books in process of things that you have done, but we're not attorneys. We're just layman veterans that go through the process, and for us to read through all the things that you had on that table, that was not a good thing to do to us, because it belittled us, and we should be respected as veterans. And again, we feel that this property should be given the land that we asking for, which is only 25 acres. You name them, wherever they're going to be, we'll proceed and find the monies available to do what we're gonna do with it. The idea behind of us not be able to receive it, it seems unreal. We are veterans that we left this community and came back. Thanks to God that we're here. But some of them are in bad shape, and now we have some youngsters that are going overseas, and we got them fighting up there. We want to be prepared for them also, to receive them in a place where they can also have a place where they can live. These folks have families. They're not like us that we got drafted and we didn't have no family except for mothers and fathers and sisters. It's a different ballgame now on this war. And so again, if the process doesn't want this community to give us this acres, then we're going to have to go through the process and get it to the taxpayers for them to vote to give us the property.
Richard D.
May I respond to Mr. Ortega for a moment? What we provided to Mr. Ortega was probably 3 binders, maybe 4 binders of information that came back from well, a lot of information. You requested to see all the information, and we provided it to you. But on 2 occasions, I provided you with the meeting notes of each of our meetings. And those meeting notes, for the most part, were taken by me. They're in simple language, and I'll be glad to provide those meeting notes to you again.
I'm also a veteran. I also work for the Department of Labor. Right now, the Department of Labor is working with veterans organizations, and they're giving money. This is a prime example of what we veterans here for the county can do. If you ask me what you put a request to the federal agency, hey, we got land here, we've got veterans property, this would be a great idea, a great opportunity to get what you want. But not only that, it's also earlier demonstrate that you always lead off the veterans. Why? We're the ones that gave you this opportunity. We're the ones that went to the war. We're the ones that got the free opportunity.
If I may respond to that just very briefly, at the last meeting when this was discussed in front of the board, it was, I believe, the first week in December of '03. If memory serves me correctly, the board members recognized your request, if you will, for property that would meet your needs. However, I think the conclusion was that this type of property was not available at the air base, and they directed staff to work with the veteran organizations and to help identify property in an urban area, in a developed area, that would more likely meet your needs. Following up on that, I did meet with the larger veteran groups in Stanislaus County. Our veteran service officer informed me that there was 22 veteran organizations in Stanislaus County. There are that many. Okay. I'll be glad to meet again. It is my thinking that we would like to hear from all 22 organizations and fully appreciate what your needs are and see how we can work with you to meet those needs.
I think a good idea, Richard, might be to go ahead and promote a program, not wait for someone to ask, and invite all, how many?
22.
22 organizations, make sure that they're all notified, because it's imperative that they come to you and tell you what they really want, where they're going to get their funding, even if we do give the land, because there's only a limited amount of resources available for these causes now, because I think Mr. Ortega at one point said he was going to go out and search some of these agencies, and I don't think you ever came back with anything in hand because it was not available. I never heard what your results were.
Mr. Simon, the reason why is because we figured that we work with Mr. Richard Jan and get things together. Our idea is not to fight City Hall.
Of course, of course.
It's the idea to work together. We don't want you not to receive the acreage. I think it's imperative that we receive the acreage because of the planning that has been put into it in regards to bringing jobs into the community. We understand that, and we sure have an idea that some of those jobs will be veterans also. And so, again, we're supposed to go look some properties, supposedly, in exchange.
I thought so too,
We
but
have not, and here we are, still going through the same thing.
Okay.
5 years, Mr. Simon, and it's still, we get the same lip service.
well, I think it'd be a good idea to get everyone together, and then you're going to find out exactly what the infrastructure is there now, what's being transferred now, why it's not being transferred now, and what the progress has been between all of these organizations who may be able to give you some help, but to determine what spaces we've looked at or what places are available, because I think we were supposed to get a report back or something, and we haven't heard either, so.
Well, I
My
think,
name is Errol Phipps, and you may be addressing the question I have. Is this request by the veterans somehow going to interfere with the acquisition? Are you against this, or neutral, or what is your position?
It's not going to interfere with the transfer, no.
just a comment, before Reagan Wilson departed the county, I met with some of the veterans of foreign wars and what have you, and I think it was right after I talked to you, Richard, on that little minute tax issue and other things where you wanted to come together and have all of the veterans have one central location. And the first order was to ask Reagan if the county had any property that we owned, and more importantly, probably with a building on it that would accommodate that request. And his report back was, and I don't think it came to the board, to be truthful, it didn't. Came back because we were kind of working here, and the answer was no, we don't. So when he departed, it kind of was left hanging there, to be truthful. The other is that we had 10 or 11 official meetings. Raul made a couple of them and made the pitch on this. And in fact, Doug back there is one of the members and a pilot and an entrepreneur. And in the planning from day one, there was not the plan to have people living there. When you look at we don't even have the keys yet. And sometimes by fate, things go, maybe looks backwards but comes out forward in the end. But I really believe there's a much better suited area or place to do this. I mean, we want to do it, so we don't want to give up on that. But we have planned and gone so far with the plans on this that to change it now may, I don't know what it would do. Richard?
My name is Richard Judge, along with the American Legion. I've been working the last 2.5, 3 years with the board, the cities, all the cities in Stanislaus County. I've got letters and I've got resolutions from all the cities in the county. And I've talked to the Board of Supervisors individually, and I've talked to Mr. Reagan Wilson a couple times, and I brought all the information to him that I have at the time. Now I'm working on letters from all the commanders of the area, plus Denham, Cardoza, Guadanovich, Hagarius, Hogdale, all of those people. And they believe it would be nice to have a Veterans Memorial District established in Stanislaus County. We need to start one of these and get it on the ballot. Let the people vote for it. If they want it, they can vote for it. If they don't want it, they can vote it out. But we need to do that. And then this entitles every city in Stanislaus County to have a veterans building. And it would be operated by the county and the city with a board of veterans. It's going to have a veterans board that would be working with the county, so that all the veterans would have one building in the city, in each city, to do their programs and have their programs and stuff like this and work. There is a taxation, but we don't need the taxation. We've got people that are willing to give us land. We work with a couple of people who want to give us some acreage in different areas. And there are people in the cities that have buildings that they don't need to use, but we could use them. We don't need the taxation. It's a .001 taxation for Stanislaus County. And Stanislaus County has a $22 billion tax base, So actually, when you, 0.001, it would come out to $66 million. We would be taking out of the pockets of the county. That would be going into the coffers of our county to operate each one of these organizations. But we need to get a Veterans Memorial District established. There are only 28 of these already in the state of California. And they're a nice place for people to go to the Bay Area to see the building in San Francisco where the War Memorial Building, that's the Veterans Memorial Building. Go into San Leandro, San Lorenzo, War Memorial Building. Those are all run by the county, but the veterans use them. When the veterans are not here, the county, and that's what we're trying to work here. So I'm going to come up again. Mr. Reagan Wilson said that at the time, he did not think it would be the right time. We're never going to have the right time, the way times are today. We're never going to have the right time. But we're making more veterans.
Yeah,
we have a war going on, and if we don't start helping them out, we're working with the VA with keeping Livermore, and we're working with the VA. If they're going to take Livermore away, they're going to build us another building first before they take that away. We've got so many projects going on that hardly a night that I'm home anymore that I'm not working for a veteran. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments?
Richard,
Mike?
go ahead, Ken.
My name's Ken Admiral. I'm a veteran. But my concern is you never want to build next to an airport. People move into developments next to airports. The next thing they want to do is shut down San Francisco, shut down Oakland, shut down Sacramento, shut down St. Louis because they don't like the noise. What's here first, the airport or these buildings? Maybe they can put the buildings up, but what are the complaints going to be when they're having meetings, having this going on, and these jets are taking off and landing? You're going to have nothing but a noise problem that you'll never live with. If they have other property in other areas away from this, they're much better off, and they'll love them a lot more.
Thank you, Ken. I think, oh, Mike, you got it.
Mike Perez, 705 West Avenue, Gustine. I'm the old-time Mexican here in the valley. And the reason I can say that is that we're talking about the environmental. The south side of the Cruz Landing airfield is a dump. When I was 6 years old, 61 years ago, my father worked for Belton Brothers. And right across the barbed wire fence, there were caterpillars that were digging trenches wider than this block, and trucks were backing up and dumping stuff from the ships from World War II. They were dumping it in there, and it had to be, I mean, to me it looked like it was 100 feet deep when I was a little bitty guy. Still a little bitty guy, big guy, I don't know. Call it whatever you want.
Yeah,
and I am standing too, Paul. But I spoke when I was on the planning commission for Stanislaus County. I went to Cruz Landing and I told some of those officers that came down with Moffett and told them there's a dump there, and they just never listened to me. I saw it. I stood there and watched those trucks, truck after truck after truck, dump stuff into that pit. And nobody's ever believed me. And when I saw the paper, I told my wife, I'm going to go down there and tell them. Nothing negative. Please. It's very positive. But I want somebody to know that there's beds, silverware, spoons, tools buried on the south end of the Cruz Landing Naval Airfield. So please know that. I saw it. I stood there and watched it. And I tried to cross the fence, and my dad says, that's not your property. You stay over here and watch those guys dump that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I do know there's quite a large area, but I thought that the large area was at the cross in front of the 2 runways in that area?
Well, as the map indicates on the back, there's a number of areas. However, the area that you're referring to, I think we just found it. And that's that 33 acres here on the south side that we had to go back in and do a survey and carve it out. And we've done that in the last 3 months.
You found all the stuff in there?
I don't know if we found all the stuff. We did identify another area that looked like it was a dumping ground.
What else might be in there, Mike?
Yeah, the government's going to keep the area that's contaminated. All the other area, the 1,300 acres, if you will, has been certified as clean and suitable for transfer. The portions that are not clean, the Navy has a responsibility to clean it up. They are doing so. They're proceeding. Each year they submit a business plan regarding cleanup, and as this property has a system in for cleanup, then it will be transferred to Stanislaus County, but not until then. But I think we just found it.
Well, the reason I was so adamant about it is because those commanders that came over there from Moffett, you know, I told them, there's a dump there, and says, no, there isn't. There's no dump. It's all been cleaned. It's all been certified. When we give it to you guys, there's nothing there. It's there. You just heard him. It's there. It's on this side. It's on the south side of the airport, but where the ball field's at, back wherever your line is, right there. It's got to be 200 football field length and maybe 15 feet deep.
Final comment.
Okay.
We really haven't had an opportunity to thank you. You did keep the Veteran Service Office open 5 days a week. And you know there's 40,000 plus of us here in this county that are veterans. And every time a veteran gets new services or new disability payments, that money comes into Stanislaus County. We want to thank you for that. We also want to thank you for your continued cooperation on this issue. It looks like we'll be able to meet with Mr. Jantz, look in another part of the county, maybe come to some accommodation that can service our needs and also really demonstrate to all the veterans and community that the Board of Supervisors stands with the troops and stands with the veterans community. So we'll meet with Mr. Jantz, and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that.
Richard, I have one quick question for you. I was a member of the steering committee from its inception for a couple of years, and from the first meeting, it was said that just a few months and we're going to have this. And a few months and a few months. Do you feel any better now about the few months than you did then, or?
I don't.
Yes, I do. I feel a lot better, and based on everything I know today, the work has been done. When I was being optimistic a couple of years ago, we were told by NASA that they were about to finish the environmental baseline survey and the findings of suitability for transfer. Them going out and identifying and making sure that the 1,300 plus acres that's going to be transferred was indeed clean took them a lot longer than we anticipated. But that document now has been circulated to the general public. Comments have come back, and I was told last week that they promised a final written document by August the 27th. So in answer to your question, we have gone through several steps, giant steps, if you will. We have gone through the process, and I'm much more confident today than I was a couple of years ago.
And we're going to have one big party when it happens, right?
I hope so.
Thank you, Richard.
2 months. Sure, Richard. Last one.
How does Stockton Airport compare to this airport here when they build those buildings next to them for produce to ship off? Would this be similar to that? Would we be interrupting San Joaquin County in shipping produce out of here from Highway 5 and 99 and all that?
We don't think so. Competition breeds competition, and we will not be providing air service to the public as Stockton does. Stockton does have longer runways than we do currently, but we're probably in a better position for corporate flight service, maybe better position for just-in-time manufacturing, and maybe in a better position in terms of business park development, because because of the nature of our general aviation airport, we have less constraints. And in addition to that, we have 2 runways, and they have 1. So there are some differences. We are in relatively proximity, but as was mentioned a few moments ago, the airports in Oakland and San Francisco have a lot of restrictions. There's no night flying, I understand, in either one of those airports, as mentioned by the gentleman. So we think we have some advantages. But yeah, there will be competition, but maybe that will help bring the aviation demand to this area.
Richard, I just want to tell the veterans, and for those of you who don't know, Mr. Mayfield and I both spent 4 years each during the Korean conflict. So we are veterans. I belong to the American Legion, and I think Supervisor Caruso was in the National Guard, if I'm not mistaken. So we know that it's important to take care of the veterans. We are them. And so we try very hard to do as much as we can and to try it within reason as far as the budget's concerned. And I don't think you have to worry about not being represented on the board.
We understand that.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Richard.
You look very young for having been in the Korean War.
I was there on a B-29.
Okay, next item would be the Connecting Stanislaus GIS, the GIS system and the Community Technology Lab, and that would be Richard Jantz. And I guess Keith Boggs, you're going to give the report?
I've been asked.
All right.
Good evening, Chairman, Mayor, members of the board, and City Council. My name is Keith Boggs, Senior Management Consultant, County Chief Executive Office. Thank you for allowing me to speak for just a few moments this evening about the Connecting Stanislaus Technology Strategies and some of the winning examples of how the City of Newman and the county have worked together to make this a best practice model of cooperation and partnership. The Stanislaus County Technology Steering Committee was formed in the fall of 2000. Over 120 representatives and leaders from 7 sectors of the community participated in a needs assessment, from business, technology, agriculture, education, healthcare, community-based organizations, and governments. At the end of this 14-month needs assessment, the Connecting Stanislaus Steering Committee had the daunting task of taking dozens of goals for improvement and quelling these into manageable implementation strategy. The 6 initiatives that all sectors agreed to pursue implementation were developing a community web portal, improving community access to technology, developing a regional approach to GIS technology, focusing on e-government strategies, adopting e-government practices in business and government, and finally targeted technology training. These can be found in the program review document, that green document that has been distributed. And I do believe there are quite a few copies in the back for the members of the public. Implementation began in the summer of 2001. Since that beginning, we've started to realize many of the goals that we set out to accomplish. With regards to the community portal, in 2003, calendar year 2003, over 49,000 visits to the portal occurred. We are on track currently to exceed over 60,000 visits in calendar year 2004. This equates to over 1 million page views, an average of about 1,200 visitors a week, and 22 page views per visitor. So not only are people coming to the community portal, but they're actually experiencing it quite extensively while they're there.
Keith, can you take just 1 minute and explain to maybe what'll be on tape?
Sure.
To those folks out in the cable land, I guess, the portal, kind of what they expect when they...
What a portal is, kind of?
What a portal is and what
Basically, a community web portal is a clearinghouse, or in our case in Stanislaus County, a no wrong door approach to the internet. When you come to Stanislaus County via connectingstanislaus.com, thank you for letting me get that plug in, you get an opportunity to get to healthcare, to education, to governments, to agriculture, to the business community, all with one-stop shop. And so if you're looking for a general topic area, be it in business or in education or any of those areas, and you come to that portal, from there you can quell down and become more specific. It makes traveling or traversing the internet that much easier.
Thank you.
The City of Newman has consistently attended our quarterly portal content development team meetings, and I encourage the members of the Newman City Council to go to connectingstanislaus.com. Under our cities tab, there is a wonderful sub-site for the City of Newman developed by City of Newman staff. Regarding community access to technology, there are now 9 new learning labs to date in the community, including Keys, Houston, Oakdale, the County Agricultural Center, the Red Shield Center in Modesto, YMCA Satellite in Turlock, the SeniorNet Lab at the Center for Senior Employment, El Concilio, and in Newman. And actually, the Newman Lab was the first lab that we rolled out in 2002 with some seed computers from then Compaq, who's now part of HP. And that is at the Healthy Start site adjacent to the Von Miner Elementary School. Regional GIS, Geographic Information Systems. We've developed 20-plus information layers for the Stanislaus County Prop 10 Commission, their leadership and their agency partners. This is a web-based GIS initiative that went live on May 25. We developed a county-wide web-based GIS framework to share with all communities and sectors, including land inventory database and video streaming. Newman has been very active in both the development and implementation of the system, and I thank the community development staff with Newman. Regarding e-government strategies task force, we hold quarterly technology meetings between all city managers and county officials. This work group has inspired much of the successes realized in GIS and the community portal, and the Newman city manager, Mr. French, continues to be very active in these discussions. And finally, targeted technology training now in our second cycle. Outreach tech training is occurring in multiple locations, including the West Side. Partnerships exist with education. 10 pieces of curriculum have been rolled out. Over 1,500 attendees in Cycle 1. We anticipate over 3,000 participants benefiting from these trainings by the end of Cycle 2. So, connecting Stanislaus in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions? Just a side note, Keith has been the staffer on this from day one. I was lucky enough to be asked to chair a broadband task force through the San Joaquin Valley Supervisors Association, 8 counties. And the upshot is that with broadband you can do multiple things with it. And the goal was, and we were far ahead of other counties. In fact, we helped them get the extra $400,000 or $500,000 to do the study to find out where their DSL was, where the fiber was. You know, the whole idea was to connect our county, large or small, rich or poor, whatever, because that is the future. And whether you're talking about the air base or you're talking about any other community, if you're not wired, it's not going to happen. So we've given great effort, and I appreciate staff on behalf of the board for all that work. We're far ahead of other counties, believe me.
Supervisor Caruso, if I may comment, we have high-speed internet in Newman. And it was something that this council has spoken about extensively. The mayor has been in a number of negotiations with Comcast, and it's something that some of our constituents have brought before us because we have a large community of commuters, of course, but people would like to telecommute so they can stay right here in town. So
that's right. That's right.
Applaud the county's effort that is expanded down here on the west side.
Very good. Thank you, Tim. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go down to Richard Jantz again on the Economic Development Bank. You may have to explain what the concept is, Richard. No.
Thank you, Chairman Caruso, council members, board members. The Economic Development Bank is in its 4th year. It's amazing. Time goes fast. The bank was the inspiration of Supervisor Ray Simon, and I believe he indeed shared the idea with his fellow board members, and they were supportive that the board set aside $1.5 million every year for a period of 5 years, and then at that time they would take a look at it and to see whether, if the community in fact was benefiting from this type of set aside regarding economic development. The idea behind the bank was to provide funds to cities and the county on a competitive basis to help facilitate economic development. And just very briefly, if I may, the jurisdictions that have applied for funds and received funds are the community of Denair, Hickman, Modesto, Patterson, City of Patterson, Waterford, City of Ceres, City of Oakdale, City of Newman, Knights Ferry, and I'm going to repeat myself, I think, but Riverbank, Houston, Oakdale, and as you can see, most communities have indeed received funds at one time or another. City of Newman received a loan of $190,000 for road improvements that I believe lead to your business park. The board has loaned or granted, if you will, approximately $5 million. Some of these dollars have been expended, not all of it. Projects are still in the pipeline, so to speak. Funds have been used for, as I mentioned earlier, a water system, new roads, the sewer system, and as Keith mentioned a few moments ago, for targeted training. Also, in some limited cases, funds were used for the market study of the Crow's Landing Air Base and targeted training. We are about to issue the next request for proposal for 04-05 during a very, very difficult budget year, as you heard from Ms. Hill-Thomas. The board retained almost all the funds in the Economic Development Bank. I think it took a little hit. I think it's down to 1.2 instead of 1.5. But if that holds during the final budget process, we're going to have 1.2 million for 04-05. Last year, the board decided to defer half of the funds for that year and tag it on to the end of the program. But I want to emphasize it was a deferral and not a reduction. So based on everything I've heard and the board action to date, they are committed to this program, and it gives the City of Newman the opportunity, in fact the opportunity is just around the corner, to apply for funds for economic development activities. Be glad to respond to any questions.
Richard, one of the grants from that, wasn't there a $150,000 grant for the State Theater out of that Economic Development Bank?
Yes, there was.
Mm-hmm. What was the reason behind that? Where does that benefit economic development?
That falls under the category of tourism. Tourism is the world's #1 economic development activity. It's the #3 activity in the United States. And in California, tourism generates about $64 billion in the state economy. In Stanislaus County, it generates about $3.6 billion. The board has been very cautious in terms of approving funding for tourism, but in limited cases, this funding has been approved by the board after recommendations coming from the Workforce Economic Development Alliance, if you will. So there are times when tourism is important to the county and brings in a considerable amount of revenue. In fact, I think the figures are around about $3.6 million that come into Stanislaus County.
So does that mean that we would be considered for a grant for our theater?
You perhaps could be. It's a competitive basis, and you would need to submit your proposal along with everybody else. But in the past, grants or loans for tourism have been approved by the board. I want to correct myself when I said 3.6. It's $300 million.
I thought so.
Thank you, Supervisor Mayfield. You know these numbers.
You know why we have a tough time with the budget now.
Yes, down in those three.
Too many zeros.
Thank you, Richard.
I think you should also mention, however, that one of the reasons they got the grant, the city of Modesto didn't match, it actually exceeded. It was about $250,000 they put into the project as well. So it was, had they not put any money into it, we would have been not very anxious to do it.
Thank you, Richard. One of the key things on this, which helps the small communities, and there are several cities that are in the smaller category, is a lot of times you'll have state and federal grants float by. And maybe they're of economic development, and a lot of them are, but it takes $100,000 to boot up $1 million, let's say, or $500,000. And there was no mechanism or really help to do that. And aside from all the other grants, and there were a few grants, but loans. And so Ray had a very good a concept idea there that maybe we could help everybody, and including the small cities, by affording that money on a kind of like a banking system, where you wouldn't lose it because you'd gain it back in economic development when you put the road in or put underground facilities in and you bring a company in or you save a company. So it's worked out very well. Okay, thank you. Okay, public facility fees program. Guess that's Ron and Mick Krosnick. Are you going to help him? Or? Okay, Ron's going to do it. You'll just advise him. Okay.
Again, I'm Ron Freitas, Director of Planning and Community Development. The public facility fee program, and we have several people in the audience who I hope will help me also, including Richard Jantz and Jim Duvall, along with Mick Krosnick, was a program put in by the Board of Supervisors in 1990 in order to collect what are known as public facility fees. Public facility fee is a fee that is paid at the time of new construction to provide for public facilities that cannot be utilized for everyday operations and maintenance. It has to go for concrete kinds of things, bricks and mortar type things with respect to buildings, roads, equipment that are caused by the increase in population, increase in growth, thereby requiring more facilities as caused by growth. I believe the city has a program of capital facility type fees or public facility fee program also. The county's program is somewhat unique in that we were one of the first, oh my goodness.
Meeting adjourned. He's waiting for us to adjourn this meeting for the next meeting, but that won't get you anywhere.
Where do you live? Nice try.
Please give your address.
You completely threw me off track there. we have a timer here to save energy. It goes off just about this time.
Are there any questions?
That's okay. We need another laugh anyway.
Okay. But the public facility fees have to be utilized for, like I say, the hard cost kinds of things. They can't be utilized for, the operations and the maintenance. In order to initiate a public facility fee program, you have to have a plan. That plan has to be based on projected population for the next whatever time frame you use.
That plan also has to be consistent with your capital facility fee program, and it's adopted by ordinance. The county, when it went in and adopted its first, the county-wide public facility fee, it was one of the first in the state. We were cutting edge. Those fees that we have are collected county-wide and within the cities, all of the cities within the county. And as you can imagine, at the time those were adopted and implemented, there was probably a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. There was concern about development that would happen outside of the city limits, within the sphere of influence of the city. So through the negotiations of the public facility fee program, one of the concessions that was given was that the county cities would collect for projects that take place within the city, and the county would not construct competing types of projects just outside the city limits within your sphere of influence. The only way a project could be constructed outside the city limits within a city's sphere of influence would be for the city to okay that project within the sphere of influence, which also represented a major concession on the part of the board. The board has essentially, in a way, given up some of its land use powers within its sphere of influence and has given those to the cities in order to allow the cities to plan for their destiny outside the city limits. That doesn't mean that a project that would benefit both jurisdictions couldn't be approved. There have been projects that have been approved outside of city limits that the cities have agreed to that would benefit both the city and the county. If I have any more, are there any questions? Would Mick, you like to add anything, or Jim, Richard?
I have questions on this.
Sure.
We collect the fees and then send them to the county, and we have a good administrative fee for doing this or whatever, probably.
That's correct.
But particularly for some of our business people, we've had a couple in the last couple of years have done some projects, and a lot of the fee structure is based on use of county roads. Now, people that build in Newman, if we use any county roads, it's Merced County roads, because people are coming from Gustine. If they come from Crow's Landing, which is about as far as they'll come, they use Highway 33, which is a state road. So really, we're not impacting the county roads, and yet we're charging these people a fee for it. Somehow this doesn't sound quite right.
Well, I believe when the program was adopted, there are roads identified that serve Newman that are in Stanislaus County, either out to I-5 or over to, say, Turlock or into other areas. Some of the businesses that are in Newman have and receive goods that travel through the roads of Stanislaus County, or via Stanislaus County roads also. Some of the cheese plants here in town probably receive milk from dairies in Stanislaus County that come through Newman.
So you're not counting the consumer, just the delivery people.
Well, it's all users of all roads.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the consumers for a business in Newman come from Newman or Gustine or Crow's Landing maybe. They don't come from Turlock, they don't come from Modesto. It's vice versa. People from here go to Modesto or Turlock or whatever, so you're just
Councilmember Reed, we have a congestion mitigation relief plan that we're working on right now with these fees, and perhaps Public Works Department, George would like to kind of outline where we're spending those fees. And some of it directly relates to roads that serve this area.
Hi, George Stillman, Public Works Director again. And thank you, because we have been working through this congestion relief program. And in the past, I think, to be quite honest, monies were not spent as quickly as they should have been to identify problems. But the way that the fund was first established was a demand model that was put through a computer system that was run by our MPO. And there was that relationship between growth in a community and fees and the roads necessary to serve that community. For the first time now, we've actually taken a program out to spend some of that money. We have about $10 million that we're using. And you will be finding improvements that will serve the Newman area along Rose Landing Road, River Road. A number of the roads in this area, we're going to start constructing things like left turn lanes to make intersections safer, do what we can do to help widen things out so we can carry more traffic. We're finding a great demand of traffic to get from Modesto over to I-5 because 99 is becoming very, very congested. And that's spilling over into the Newman area where there's trucks going both ways, going from I-5 through the Newman area up north and south again the other direction. But I think you'll find numerous improvements that are going to be constructed now, mainly safety improvements, spot improvements to increase capacity. It will be a benefit to the city of Newman.
I understand this, but I think that you're penalizing the business people here who are not benefiting from that. The people that would benefit for that basically are the people who are going to Modesto or Turlock from here. You're not getting people coming from there to here to buy from our businesses.
As a suggestion, probably be a bad one, would be to try to find the original modeling on that and to show where actually the demand curves were. For the fees to be established properly, there has to be a nexus. There has to be a relationship between the fees that are paid and the roads and the impacts that are being mitigated. And say just a suggestion would be to try to dig that model up again and see where the demand would be, because it would be specific enough to say that, Newman traffic goes in this direction and takes these roads. For the county's program, we want to update this model also because we really do need that relationship established, I think, for not just Newman, but for all the cities and for the county itself.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I believe we had a citizen from Newman here that would like to make a couple comments, if that's okay with you. Yes.
Keep it short so we can hear you.
Shorten this a little bit. My name is Doug Stevens. I live at 1107 S Street in Newman. I'm a long-time resident here. I came here just after Ray did. And
what was the name of your horse?
It looked to me like you came before I did.
Anyway, I'm a local developer sometimes, and we built a shopping center here in the south side of town several years ago, in 1994. And where this shopping center is located happens to be about 3/4 of a mile from the Merced County line. And we built there on purpose because we knew there was nothing like that in Gustine, and we needed that draw to make our sales work. Well, there's county fee. It's a road fee. And it's just one we were just talking about. And years ago, Ron Freitas told me about Nexus. And so I have difficulty in establishing a Nexus where we build a retail facility here in Newman, and people stay here in Newman to shop rather than go to Turlock or Modesto or whatever. It seems to me that's a reverse Nexus, and maybe we should be getting a fee because we're not using your roads anymore. Anyway, that's my main point, and I just think it's unfair. I think it's an illegal fee. We had a small shop building we're building right now that the combined fees were $40,000 for a 9,000 square foot shop. Our rents that we can command here do not approach the rents that can be had on the east side. So it costs the same to build here, and it's just difficult. Newman is in bad trouble regarding retail sales. In fact, I'd like you to just look at, I won't take too much of your time, I just want you to look at this one. Again, for the supervisors, already educated. Anyway, this chart is result of five-year study of retail sales in all the cities of Stanislaus County. And if you'll see right there that Newman has the worst record of any of the cities in the county. And, you know, I hate to be up here sounding like the Rodney Dangerfield, but sometimes we think we are like the Rodney Dangerfield of Stanislaus County down here. And anyway, I do appreciate your coming over here and talking to us, but I would also like to see something done about these fees. It's not helping us. It's not helping us with economic development, and it's not helping. What is that? Jurisdictional cooperation? Is that what I heard earlier? Anyway, that's about my point to make.
Okay, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug. Yeah, that's AB 1600, which you have to pay for your impacts that are contemporary. We can't go back and say, Doug, we have a problem down here. It's been here for 100 years and you're going to pay for it. So there are some safeguards. But I was not on the board at the time. I was a council member in Ceres, and we were greatly appreciated the fact that the county would not develop within the sphere of influence of our city, because that was kind of our backyard. And they were very good about that. I remember there was a fellow that was hired, I don't remember his name, but that went through all these numbers, and the board really, I remember Ray in particular, really beat the heck out of him because you know, he questioned the amount of those fees and how they were determined, because you have what you call trip-ins. If you put in a 7-Eleven, you're going to have people coming and going all the time. That's really a penalty because you have so much traffic every 5 minutes that it uses up your road capacity and what have you. So you're going to pay more. I don't know if the formula is probably totally even throughout the county. Obviously, when you're a smaller city on the fringe, probably less traveled areas, as opposed to Ceres or Modesto or some of the others, to be very truthful. I don't remember all the formulas. I know there were roads that are used more than, like Highway 33, which is a state road, but yet you have other roads that go through. But I think that we're still looking at those formulas, and somewhere there's some equity, I'm sure.
I like what you're saying, Paul, and the reason why I understand exactly what my counterpart, my colleague here in town, David, was saying. I understand what Doug Stevens was saying, and I think it was summarized in a sense by staff when they mentioned about major concessions and about our sphere of influence and also about our monies. And we got a really good report with how things are broken down financially, and certainly as all of us struggle with the budget constraints in the county and in local cities, we are in Stanislaus County. You know, it's funny, he made mention of the reference of Rodney Dangerfield. I'm more like analogous to Muhammad Ali. I'm going to come out and look at it in a positive aspect. We're sounding the bell out here on the west side. This is the city of Newman. It's on the west, south end of Stanislaus County, and we're in Stanislaus County. And one of the things I'm most appreciative of, I think I spoke it well when we opened this evening about the invocation, about giving thanks. This is a very beneficial meeting. I'd like to thank each of you in summer, because we've gone through some changes. You've gone through administrative change, and that takes some time. We in this city have gone through administrative change. You heard an announcement of our new city manager. But there's room for negotiations. There's room for mitigating things. And it's something we really need to look at and share the equity a little bit better, simply because too often I've heard comments like from Doug Stevens, a long-term resident, feeling like they've been left out in this city. And we're not left out. I think it's our duty, and collectively, from the County Board of Supervisors and city representatives here behind us dais, to work together to ensure that our county gains its strength. We move from that 11 cent, where you see the neighboring counties at 22 cent and 23 cent, to get our fair share. The political climate in this state is changing. It has changed very dramatically. And the Central Valley, which roughly made up about 16% of this state, is growing. And we know where those growths are occurring. and we need to make a stance. Two of you were at the State Assembly yesterday. I was there, or today. I was there yesterday. We need to raise our voices and be heard, and I think it's important that we as a group toll the sounding bell. And I have a great deal of respect of the gentlemen here that have served as long as they have in this county. I'm learning. I'm still on a learning curve, having been here only 13 years, but I'm proud of where I live. People will always say, because I actually commute over to the Bay Area, Newman, where's that? And I just make mention of Modesto, and pretty much everyone knows where that town is now. But we want to keep everything in a positive light, so thank you.
Just one comment. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Please understand that there probably are inequities here and there, but please understand there's a big picture too, as you know. We've got Diablo Grande up there, which is development. They are a user of goods and services here in Newman and Patterson. The Crow's Landing Naval Base, if it performs in the long term, which we all hope it will, it's a great big economic engine in time. Maybe not for us at our age, but for the next generation, for the West Side. The board has put a lot of time, energy, and money into the West Side, whether it be the flooding in Patterson or the flooding efforts in Newman. I remember bringing on behalf of the board, and they voted for it, the $300,000 from the Tartaric fines to the council. So there are things that have happened that have been very good.
Absolutely, our streetscape.
You better be, you know, Paul, you better be careful what you wish for, because if I remember right, I think that Newman has about 3,000 acres in their sphere of influence, if I'm not wrong. The LAFCO, you have 3,000 acres. You talked about Houston. They grew by 11.9. They're all houses. There's no retail downtown. It's drying up. Okay, they don't shop downtown. They go to Turlock, they go to Modesto, they go someplace else. So when you look at it, well, the way I'm looking at it is that you can build a bunch of houses, you can do that. But if your downtown doesn't keep up with your production of houses on the outside, internally, you'll lose all the benefits you're going to gain with houses. Now, if you was to take Newman, for instance, we have right now in Houston, they're trying to pass a bond for a new school, $25 million for a new school. With growth, it comes problems. You don't have enough schools, you don't have enough this, you don't have enough that. So be careful what you wish for as far as Newman. If you like the atmosphere here, and if you like the way the small town that you are, okay, you appreciate it, because once you start growing, like Houston is growing, now I live there, I'm a mile from town. Once you start growing like that, everything that you have there has to be brought up. The schools, the fire department, the police department, everything you're talking about. But you also have to build a downtown. You just can't let everything leave your city and go to Turlock, to Ceres, to Modesto. But that's what's happening. I mean, in the morning, when you leave Houston, I've talked to George about it. There's a solid stream of cars, and they're in certain when they're going to work. You can be 20 cars behind at the stop sign. You could be 30 cars behind. You could be 50 cars behind. So with all this stuff you're talking about, there's a good side, but there's a downside too.
And Supervisor, I think that's probably one of the reasons why this issue's on the agenda here with regards to public facilities fees, is that, you know, we've discussed the nexus specifically with regards to transportation, but there's the entire list of items that are within that public facilities fees for collection. And you make a good point, and I think that's one of the points that Mr. Stevens tried to make, is that if we're at a competitive disadvantage to build new commercial or industrial because of exorbitant fees, then that makes us go to Turlock and makes us go to Modesto and some of the other outlying areas that will ultimately impact Stanislaus County roads, because, as I say, that perhaps puts us at a competitive disadvantage to build locally. The additional $50,000 in fees, or, you know, not only from the shopping center, the additional fees they had, We have a gentleman across the street from here that is in the process of building a new building that has additional fees as well. So I think that's the thing that we're trying to make the board sensitive to is, that we don't want to get carried away on excessive fees and taxes on folks trying to build a building and keep their business local.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Anyone from the audience? Okay, we're down to where?
Public comment.
Public comment. Hopefully we've given everybody a chance as we've gone down the items to speak and address issues. Is there anyone in the public that we've either missed or has a general comment? Okay, seeing none. It's Mike.
Mike Perez, 705 West Avenue. I like what you were saying, Mr. Mayfield, about Houston. Being in sales where I've been, I'm all over the place. And one of the things that I sat right here when I was on the Park and Recreation Commission, and I begged the city council here, and I asked the Board of Supervisors, because we were on that Park and Recreation survey that we took, so that we knew how many ball fields each town in the county would need. In 10 years from now, we could tell you that Patterson was going to need a swimming pool, was going to need this, Newman was going to need a track, and we were going to do that. And part of the thing that I hear, and I know we have to do access and charge people for building, but please do not forget to plan ahead. Don't buy or build a building that the day you walk in it's obsolete. And I understand we have constraints being the dollars, but we have to also plan ahead that there's room for that school to grow, and not that the day that you take it, that it's full.
Unfortunately, I think the way the state of California laws are, you have to show impaction and have kids in closets before you can really get your money in one form or another. On the Parks and Recreation, very vital to communities. We have the master plan, and we all dealt with that. Prop 40 monies have dried up pretty much. It's gone. Prop 12. Prop 40 money, I think the state, if I'm not right, held it back about a year. And now they're starting to dispense. So with all these state bond monies, it's been very difficult to get projects out lately. But that is our Bible, so we're going to try to follow it. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Well, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to thank the board and county staff and the public for coming over and putting up with our little small room we have. Maybe we can take a little bit out of that next check to expand the room, but we'll have to talk to somebody about that. But
what were those fees?
But thank you all for coming, and after this joint meeting, we're going to have a little meeting ourselves. We have one item to attend to, and you're welcome to stay.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.